Hello everyone, you're very, very welcome. I think most of you are on mute. I'd be very grateful if those of you that aren't presenting could mute yourselves so that we minimise background noise, and it makes it a lot easier during the presentations. So you're very welcome to this session on the importance of research in adult basic skills. My name's Tara Furlong. I'm the chair of Breakout, Research and Practice in Adult Literacies, which is an organisation which supports practitioners to, of all of the preparations, I've got to put my phone on silent. So, Repair, which supports organisations and individuals, practitioners, researchers, policymakers, sometimes even learners, to engage with practice in the field, engage with research. It scaffolds through reflective practice, writing about projects, through to fully peer-reviewed work. And we also participate in events such as these and other campaigns in the sector. So it's wonderful, as I said, to be running this session on the importance of research in adult basic skills. We're delighted to have Rachel Greenslade with us from Sheffield Lifelong Learning and Lucy Palmer from Wakefield College, both of whom are going to be talking about research that they've been able to engage in their organisations. And following up on that, we've got Corinne Egglestone from the Learning and Work Institute, who's going to be talking to us about some of the work that they've been doing. At the end, we've got an opportunity for a short amount of a chat and Q&A. But I would very much encourage all of you to put commentary and questions into the chat function during the course of the event, and we will try to pick out some of those for the presenters to respond to at the end. So, can I hand over, Rachel, to you?
Yes, please. I'm just going to share my screen. And I have a lot to say, so I'll try and get through it as efficiently as possible. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Tara, for that introduction. I've entitled my presentation, so I hope you can see, Action Research and the Importance of Listening. And I hope the significance of this title will become clear over the next few minutes. I was privileged to be part of ETF's OTLA 7 programme last year, where for the first time in my career, I initiated and ran an action research project. Some of you may well be familiar with action research. I've already seen some names here who I know are, but for those of you who are not, now my slides aren't moving. I'm going to do this instead. Correct. It can be defined as a method of systematic inquiry that teachers undertake to diagnose areas for improvement in their practice and to develop practical solutions in response. In other words, hands-on, real-life problem solving by those closest to the action. I've also heard it described as a catalyst for educational practice innovation, which is quite a grand claim, and for learning and development on an organisational level as well as a classroom one. And I think it certainly has the potential to do this, in my experience, as long as we listen to our learners, we collaborate with colleagues who listen to us as critical friends and whose input we absorb, and then that our findings create a conversation that is listened to across our organisations. So please allow me to briefly share a little about the nature of our developing writing project from earlier this year. So the premise, like many other level 2 ESOL, level 2 functional skills, English, GCSE language teachers, I have often listened to my adult learners' deep concerns about the disparity between the success and confidence in the speaking and listening and the reading elements of functional skills, and then their ability to communicate effectively on paper. And my level 2 learners, particularly those from an ESOL background, always know what they want to say. They often have a key vocabulary, but they can't always connect, relate, or order what they want to say correctly on the page. And this has been a long-term frustration. I really wanted to tackle it by developing an approach that could take them back to the basics of sentence construction, that would give them ownership of those building blocks that we use to create meaning, and that would cement their writing confidence. Thankfully, when I came to my managers and asked for permission to pursue this and showed them the proposal, they listened and they agreed. And also, I really appreciated the listening of my mentor, my excellent mentor, as part of the programme. I had all sorts of wild and wacky ideas about how I was going to create a system that had never been done before with colour and shape and parsing and all sorts of things. And I utterly confused myself. And she gave me the room and the time to just reflect on what could be done perhaps in a simpler, more effective fashion. And that's when I had a chance to think about this fact that my learners' spoken grammar was much better than their written grammar, that they seemed to hear more mistakes than they saw, and they would speak more accurately than they write. And so from these thoughts, this concept of grammar ears was born. So this is very much a back to basics approach. And I decided to focus only on grammar. So there was no distraction from concerns about punctuation or the horrors of spelling for some people. I first trialed this approach with level 2 learners on an online employability course who had enough of functionality and they wanted to write creatively to try and strengthen their writing in that way. So I listened to them and I decided to develop a suite of tasks around autobiographical themes. I always find that there's plenty of subject matter here. People love to write about themselves and talk about themselves, and they are also incredibly nosy and love to listen to other people talking about themselves too. It's human nature, I guess. And also this is material that people were happy to share. And this was key to this premise of this approach, because the idea was that learners would write at home and then they would come to the lessons and read their work out loud to their peers. And the idea was that everybody listened. So the writer themselves listened to their own writing being broadcast, and they tried to be more conscious of grammar mistakes, but also that their peers, as critical friends, offered that same listening. So if they heard a mistake or spotted something that sounded like an error, they would put their hand up at the end of a sentence or a paragraph, and then they would highlight what that error was. They might correct it, or we might discuss what the correction would be. All of this was underpinned by the idea that I really think our ears are attuned to harmonious grammar. We can hear when grammar is out of tune. And certainly my learners did notice and instinctively know when something sounded wrong. They couldn't always correct it, but often they would say that doesn't sound right. And I think this comes from years of everyday exposure to standard English, whether it's at the supermarket, at the school gate, when they listen to their children talk, for many of those from an ESOL background whose kids have very fluent English, or they're watching television or even the radio, they're absorbing standard grammar all the time. And so they are able to say that just doesn't sound as it should. Point 4 here, I've said again, they became active listeners as critical friends. This encouraged collaborative writing. So they went from correcting each other or helping each other correct at the beginning of the course to actually, towards the end, helping each other to write more effectively. So going from saying that doesn't sound right to saying that could sound better, which was incredibly exciting. Their written work was assessed for grammar alone. I went for an ungrading approach. So mistakes were highlighted but not corrected, because I felt this created a focus on self-correction, self-reliance, and this real sense of telling them to trust their grammar instincts and to trust their ears. I just want a quick aside, which I haven't really got time for, but I'm so keen to talk about this that I'm going to do it so quickly. So I've done a bit more reading around this idea of the power of reading out loud, and I came across an excellent neuroscience article on the BBC Future website recently, part of which said this: the ancient art of reading aloud has a number of benefits for adults, from helping improve our memories and understand complex texts to strengthening emotional bonds between people. And far from being a rare or bygone activity, it is still surprisingly common in modern life. Many of us intuitively use it as a convenient tool for making sense of the written word, and are just not aware of it. The BBC just last month had the Read Out Loud Challenge as part of an adult literacy initiative, and I think it's something that deserves to be explored further in terms of adult FE. But back to the project. So, in response to the grammar ears element, the project developed a second phase. The grammar ears certainly had helped many learners to spot mistakes and also to self-correct, but there were still these kind of stubborn specific grammar issues that needed to be dealt with. Learners had slightly different profiles where this was concerned, especially depending on what their first language was. But certainly everybody had that need to spend more time looking at individual issues. So I tried bending the classroom rather than flipping it by giving learners specific grammar exercises to complete at home. I tried to tailor these to their individual needs, although there were patterns emerging. So determiners, subject, verb, agreements, prepositions, tenses, all of these things came up. We used quite a lot of self-mark online resources, which they would let me know how they were getting on. They'd show me their marks, I would respond, and they were refreshing knowledge and skills perhaps that they'd had for some time over the years of learning English and being here, and then addressing these individual gaps. Then they did creative writing tasks designed to use the particular grammar rule that they had studied. Again, they read it out in class. Again, errors were highlighted, not corrected, and eventually they produced this kind of summative assessment, which was the version they had corrected the most, and I had that to mark. I just want to share a short video from one of my learners with whom I use this approach in a one-to-one context rather than in lessons. So she did functional skills lessons with me, and then we had this approach as part of a one-to-one.
Hi, I would like to say that lesson one-to-one really helped me. My English is a lot better now than it was 6 months ago. At the beginning of those lessons, I wasn't sure that Rachel's method would help me. I thought how listening to my writing by reading to myself can improve my English. But after a couple of lessons, I start to see the progress. I can notice my mistakes. She always showed me where are my mistakes, and after she gave me extra work, I think without that extra time, I will still don't know where I make that mistake. Thank you.
So just as a little bit, a snapshot of evidence from this same lady, Renata. She was happy for me to use her name. Here is kind of an average piece of work from her in February of this year with 18 grammar mistakes. And then we fast forward to July with only 8. She worked really hard. She had very little confidence in her writing. She assumed she was going to fail from when she started the level 2 functional skills course. But by using the approach and her really engaging with it, she made excellent progress and she passed in the summer. What was great was that she really wanted to absorb more English by listening. So she would often ask me for other things she could listen to. So I had her listening to BBC World Service in the car, going to pick her kids up, and podcasts when she was cooking tea, and she might listen to audiobooks during a break at work. She found it easy and convenient to take on board standard English in this way, and also easier to recall. So overall, did the project make progress? Well, yes, I think it did. Sadly, I couldn't get many other colleagues involved because of COVID. But I think those who were able to get involved towards the end agreed that the approach teaches learners that they have absorbed more grammar than they realise, and then gives them the opportunity to apply this to their own writing. And so I think really what I said at the top, that they do become accurate and more confident communicators. And this is as a result of these 4 factors. Focusing on one area of writing at a time definitely helped them. It liberated them from worrying about punctuation and spelling for that time. And actually, interestingly, punctuation and spelling was not a massive issue in what they were producing. Vocalizing and listening to written work, boosting confidence and skills. Certainly the idea of broadcasting their work to others made them really engaged with how accurate and well written it was as well. And that was something else I'd like to explore. Writing personally and creatively as part of a group, again, encouraging them to listen to one another, and they work so well as a community of writers. And this idea of grammar study at home, coupled with creative classroom collaboration, seemed to bring an element of joy to accuracy and writing well. I've got another video. I really want to share it, so I'm going to. I really hope I don't overrun. And this is just an interview I did with some learners at the end of the year. They did the course early on, and they're just reflecting on the impact it had on them.
Right, ladies. It's lovely to catch up with you again. Haven't seen you for 7 months, and we've just had a really nice chat about how things have been for you in the past year, really. And I just wanted you to share something about the impact that the course had on you, on your confidence in English, and how it's kind of helped you in life recently. So, Angela, if you'd like to start.
I I have done lots of different courses around here. Then I came here, my English wasn't very good. So I did my ESOL, I finished my ESOL level 2, I finished my functional English, but the last we spent with you the course, was brilliant, really, really brilliant. It provided me especially essential knowledge, skill, and understanding that gave me a more confidence. So I can spend my life independently, and it's a very exciting news. I have a permanent job now, TA permanent job in my children's school, and all credit goes to you because you made me like this.
Oh, cool. It's all your hard work.
Yeah.
Just tell me quickly about how, because I know you have to go and pick your children up, how you have used the ideas that we talked about in your job, how working with the children has helped your own spoken and written English.
Yeah, I have you gave us lots of technical things, and I can use them with the children as well. So it is a very great help.
But you were talking too about how you listen to the children and how that helps.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I absorbed the things from around me. In the beginning, when I came here, it was like I'm a deaf. I couldn't understand the people, and now I am absorbing the words, the sentences from different around me. So it makes a very big difference for me.
Fantastic. And I asked you both if you'd like to share something, one of your favorite pieces that you wrote on the course. And I think
my favorite piece, poetry always my favorite one, but I never tried before. And you gave us a very beautiful opportunity. So I wrote When I Am Old.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
So I am reading it for you. Thank you. When I am old, I will have a charming personality with shining grey hair, wearing a gown of sober, soft colors, covering my head with a stunning scarf. When I'm old, people around will treat me with respect, care, and value my words. When I am old, my children will give me back with interest what I am doing for them now. When I am old, I will still be teaching my grandchildren. When I am old, I won't be doing home chores, but I will be feeding my precious family with my special dishes. When I am old, all the dreams I have dreamed will come into view. All of my dreams will come true.
That's beautiful.
That's all.
Right, so I'm going to move on to my last two slides. I have been struck by the importance of listening. The content and action research contest of this project, as I've said, has been a timely reminder of how close and careful listening is central to effective, true communication on all levels. I just wanted to lastly illustrate that by showing you what's kind of happened next with the project. And this is as a result of my managers listening to me and supporting me. We're producing an anthology of learner work, which we can keep as a record and a resource, and it is a wonderful thing for the learners to have. We've created bridging courses using the approach of the project to help learners bridge those gaps in their writing between functional skills levels. And lastly, I'm hoping to explore a room to read concept, a short course where groups of adult learners will meet in libraries and where they'll be able to have space and opportunity to explore a range of powerful texts by reading them out loud to one another, listening, discussing, and fully absorbing them. And this, I hope, will further help to inspire and enable them to become the kind of writers that they want to be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Rachel. We've now got Lucy, who's also looking at some action research she did around ESOL learners and online learning. Lucy.
Thank you. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So yeah, our project was around online learning and how to enable ESOL learners to access online learning. Because with the lockdown, we realised that ESOL learners really faced the an unlevel playing field with regards to accessing online learning and blended learning. So our project was called Leveling the Playing Fields, and it was around how to enable ESOL learners to access their online courses easier, and around the language as well that we would need to pre-teach them to enable them to access their studies. So it wasn't just me that was doing the project. We worked as a team, which again was quite difficult during COVID because we weren't allowed to be in the same staff room. So this is our team at Wakefield College, and I kind of just stepped up and kind of pulled everything together really, but it was very much a team effort. So the biggest thing that we got from working together was really like having a shared document, and that enabled us to all put in our ideas and kind of get things from other people in the sort of same way that you would talk about things in a staff room and have like bouncing off each other. We were able to do that through a shared document. That was really useful during the time when we weren't allowed to be together. So the first thing that we designed was an initial assessment for digital skills, and we redesigned this in so many different formats before we came to this version of it, which is on Microsoft Forms, and it tests out the skills that are needed and also the vocabulary that they will need to take part in online learning effectively, so that even before they start the course, you know where individual students sit with their digital skills. So that's been something that's been really useful and something that we're continuing on with this year. Another thing that we did was using emojis and avatars to engage our younger learners. As you can see, this is our virtual classroom, and this is what some of our tutors used to deliver their online lessons. It's a replica of a classroom that we have in college, so it's hopefully making them feel a little bit more familiar, and it has links to everything that they would need. So, you know, if they needed some advice about coronavirus, they could just click on the link, and it has links to Moodle and, you know, things that they would use in college anyway. But yeah, they really engaged with getting their, you know, making their own avatar, and using their avatar. They used their avatar for a number of different reasons. Over lockdown, it was a really, really useful way of just kind of doing like a little, just a little check on them, really, a welfare check, because they don't want to. I don't know about you, but my learners do not want to put their cameras on. They will not. I'm just looking at like a blank screen all the time. They would send me an emoji, you know, like a little avatar, just to say how they were feeling. So it was nice to do that welfare check in that way, and just say, you know, is there anybody that's, you know, sending a kind of sad emoji, then you could follow that up later. Another thing that we did was interactive PowerPoints, and these kind of were on a topic, and then all the stuff could be just put into that one PowerPoint. So you can use things from the internet, you can use worksheets that you've already got, because what I was finding with my students was things were all over the place and they couldn't follow, you know, they didn't know where to get everything. So by putting it all into one place, it really helped bring it all together and know they knew what to do. It can be used as flipped learning, it can be used in the classroom, it can be used online and independently. And we found it really, really useful to teach a whole topic and get the students really engaged with that. Some of our students even started making their own PowerPoints using their own avatars to then send me their work that they'd done. So that was really great to see that they were improving their skills in that way and being able to create something in a similar style. We also developed in a similar way to the interactive PowerPoints. We developed the language for online learning PowerPoint, the combination of reference material and how-to guides, as well as having a language focus that students would need to be able to access everything. So it goes from, you know, how to join a Teams session to, you know, what do the different functions on a keyboard do, different things like that. And it's very specific to Wakefield College because obviously every institute will have their own particular hoops for students to jump through before they can access things. So this was something that was really, really useful to getting our students online. We had a few new groups start just at the start of lockdown 3, I think. So in the January, we had some groups start, and some of them were pre-entry learners with no experience of online learning at all, and they were able to this learning guide, which then enabled them to go on to join their team's lessons. So this is something that can be emailed out to them, or they can put it onto their team page and use it as like a little bit of a reminder. We've also been embedding Microsoft Teams. We did blended learning while we could last year. Obviously during the lockdown periods, we weren't able to do blended learning. So it really enabled us to make a swift transition to the completely online learning by embedding the digital skills and teaching through Teams in the classroom, identifying any issues that arose from that. And then once we were locked down, we were straight into the online teaching without any issues really. I just share with you one of our students. He is a pre-entry learner from Gambia and completely illiterate in his L1. He's a full-time student, he's 16 to 18, and at the start of the year was unable to join any online activities. I was his maths teacher and he couldn't join an online class. We gave everybody a tablet to use, and he was just completely unable to do anything. So he eventually managed to join an online class, but he wasn't able to use any of the functions. And I noticed that at the end of the session, when I'd ended the call, he was on for like another 4 hours before his battery ran out on his tablet. He didn't know how to end the call. So between me and his ESOL teacher, we did a whole class call where they were all getting online and learning how to use all the functions. And from then on, his confidence really grew. He was he was on the phone a few times at the beginning of the session, and I'm like, what's going on? Why are you on the phone? And he's like, oh, I'm just helping other people. I'm helping them, teacher. So it was really, really nice to see. And he's just, his confidence has really grown now. And it's just opened up so many other doors to him that he would never have even been able to consider before, and he's so much happier, and it's so nice to see. We are continuing with blended learning this year, not as much as we did last year, but we think that it's a really important skill to continue with. So the learning from our project was that we discovered that all levels of learners are able to engage with online learning if it's approached in the right way. As well as opening up possibilities for students, it's also opened up new possibilities for staff who've had to adapt and upskill to meet the needs of the learners. And also to accurately assess the digital skills and the vocabulary and the language of digital skills. They're just so connected and intertwined that you can't really separate them out, the digital skills from the language and vocabulary. So it's really important, the language around online learning as well. So our next steps, we would like to develop an essential digital skills for ESOL learners course, which would be would run before students would enroll onto an ESOL course that includes their online learning. We are continuing the blended learning model so we can build on the success here, and we are continuing to utilise the initial assessment to identify our starting points and progress. I found it really useful in particular because I think doing an action research project, it kind of gives you a safe space to kind of try new things out, things that you wouldn't have thought about before perhaps. And you know, there's no real danger in it, because, you know, if something doesn't work, you say, oh, well, it didn't work, we'll try something else. But I really enjoyed kind of being creative, and I think you get stuck in a bit of a rut sometimes with what works, and you think, oh, well, that's worked, I'll just do that again the next year. But it's been really, really nice to try something new and a different way of working. And I think as well, doing the project during the pandemic allowed us to be really, to work as a team when we couldn't really work as a team. So it was really great for the whole team. And that's it really. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And Corinne Eggleston from the Learning and Work Institute is now sharing an evaluation toolkit with us to support practitioners to engage more with research in their own practice. Corinne?
Hi everyone. Okay, I'll just share my screen 1 second. Okay, hope that's working. Right, so so hi everyone, my name's Corinne, I'm the research manager at the Learning Work Institute, and I just wanted to quickly share today a toolkit that we developed as part of our role as the evaluation partner in the Nesta Career Tech Challenge, and which could be used, we think could be used to help providers to evaluate basic skills provision. So before I go into the toolkit, just wanted to talk for a moment in a bit more detail about what evaluation is, to give a bit of a background. So what is evaluation? Why is it important? Evaluation examines the implementation and outcomes of a programme or a course to assess whether the anticipated effects, costs and benefits have been realised. It identifies what works, where problems arise, can highlight good practice. It can also identify unintended consequences or unanticipated results of a particular approach or intervention. And it can assess value for money. And importantly, evaluation allows you to demonstrate impacts, to demonstrate with a level of reliability and robustness what impact has occurred through a course or intervention. Evaluations can be grouped into two main types. So there's impact evaluations, which provide an objective assessment of changes that have occurred and the scale of those changes, and how much of those changes can be attributed to an intervention or a course. And a process evaluation, which assesses whether a project and its activities are being implemented effectively, what's worked well and not so well in terms of implementation, and what can be learned from how the course or intervention has been delivered. And evaluation is increasingly being used in adult education to assess a number of issues. I've put some there on the slide. So generating evidence about what works in engaging learners, increasing motivation, helping to find out what is and isn't effective, helping organisations to make decisions about future policies, and providing evidence of impact to support funding. I've put a few examples here of where evaluation has made a real impact on courses or programmes. Keep an eye on time, so I won't go through all of them, but the first couple are quite interesting. So the first one is the community-based language intervention, or CBEL, which some of you may already be aware of, which is a programme aimed at individuals with very low levels of English proficiency, involving 66 hours of guided learning and support over an 11-week period. A couple of years ago, L&W conducted an evaluation of the CBEL programme with the aim of testing both whether it was effective in improving proficiency, but also whether it helped individuals to integrate into their wider community and society. This used a randomized controlled trial, which is sort of the gold standard evaluation method, where you're comparing two random groups of learners, both of whom took part in the CBEL programme, but at different times, so you could compare differences between them. And it found that the course had made both a strong and sizable difference in both proficiency, but also that it increased social mixing, social integration, and identified a number of practical social benefits, such as building friendships, increased levels of trust in other people, confidence in talking to health professionals, confidence in visiting shops independently, that sort of thing. So although quite a bit of that is stuff that you would already know from experience or anecdote, the key point here is that the robust use of this evaluation method enabled us to demonstrate these impacts in a reliable way, which then resulted in continuing funding of the programme. So it was used to demonstrate those impacts. And then the second example is sort of the other way around. It shows the importance of finding negative results rather than just positive results. So there was an intervention developed by the Behavioural Insights team to test whether sending text messages to 16 to 19-year-old FE students could help improve their GCSE resit pass rates for English and maths by text messages to prompt them to engage in classes or exams or engage with study materials. And there was an initial pilot evaluation which found promising results for this. And so it was rolled out to about 4,000 students across 31 FE colleges. But then the full evaluation found that there was actually no impact. There's no evidence that sending these text messages was improving pass rates. So this was an important finding, and the approach was discontinued, and the resources that were going into setting that up and keeping it going were directed into other approaches, things which might work better. So although it was a negative result, it was still very important to know that that particular intervention that was being tested wasn't working. So our evaluation toolkit. So as I mentioned, we developed this as our role as the evaluation partner in the Nesta Career Tech Challenge, which was launched in 2019 and in partnership with the FE, and aimed to identify and test new digital learning approaches and interventions that are effective in building career adaptability and learner motivation amongst people working in at-risk occupations which are shrinking due to demographic changes, AI, technological development. There were 11 organisations which were given grants to develop and test new approaches. And as part of the conditions of the grants, each of the organisations had to evaluate their own project. And our role was as an evaluation partner. So we didn't conduct the evaluation, we supported each organisation to conduct their own evaluation. And one of the main resources we developed to do this was our evaluation toolkit. So the toolkit is aimed at delivery organisations, developers and providers. It's non-technical, practical, so not aimed at evaluation specialists, aimed at people who don't have to have any prior experience of evaluation or research to use it and set up an evaluation of their course or programme. And out of the organisations in the Career Tech Challenge, a reasonable proportion were small organisations who hadn't been involved in any evaluation previously. The intention very much is to cover the basics of evaluation, not to cover sort of in-depth statistical complex evaluations that on a much larger scale, to give people the basics to get started. It includes information, guidance and examples on key aspects of the evaluation process, quite a wide range of different areas. So developing a theory of change, which for those not familiar is a way of setting out for relationships between all the inputs and activities in a course or a programme and all the interconnections between those and the outcomes that you want to achieve from it, to try and set up a picture of how everything works together and how everything connects, which is very commonly used in evaluations. It covers designing and delivering a process evaluation, so looking at what's working well and less well, and that includes guidance on using different types of research methods and tools, such as participant interviews or staff interviews or focus groups or surveys, and suggested topics and questions that could be covered and included in those. It also covers collecting and analysing participant information, it's also known as management information, so information about who is participating and whether there is a different impact between different groups of people. Also using outcome tools to assess impact, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a second. Covers analysis and reporting of results, and then what you need to be aware of in terms of ethics when you're conducting research or evaluation. So outcomes tools are one of the key parts of the toolkit. Outcomes tools or social metrics are increasingly being used to measure the wider outcomes of adult learning. So this doesn't generally include increases in proficiency or the sort of direct skills impact. It's more the wider benefits for individuals experience from taking part in adult learning. So things like improved confidence, improved self-efficacy, improved social integration, better mental health and well-being. So a range of wider benefits which are generally accepted to occur through adult education, but are quite difficult to actually objectively measure. And there are a range of established, robust and validated tools across a range of different fields which exist to measure these outcomes. And in the toolkit, we've adapted some of these measures from different fields to be used in adult education. So the outcomes tools enable you to look at how participants' attitudes, behaviours and skills have changed during the time they've been on the course. They're designed to be measured before and after a course or programme. And common way to do that is using surveys. So surveys at the beginning of the course, surveys at the end of the course, which have the same questions answered by the same learners, which creates a baseline so that you can compare someone's, for example, confidence at the start of the course and their confidence at the end of the course, and see if there's any difference between the two. I should note here that outcomes tools can't you can't say that there's been a causal impact of a course or an intervention through outcomes tools, because it doesn't take into account wider factors in the learners outside of the education. But unless you have a randomized group you can compare them against, but they are still very useful in indicating where there's been an impact. So if you have a group of learners who the majority of whom have had a substantial increase in a particular area, it does give a strong indication that the course has or program has caused that. So just very quickly, a couple of examples of outcomes tools are in the toolkit, and there's quite a wide range of them covering quite a range of different areas. So this is a set of questions which measure attitudes towards adult education. Asks a range of questions, both positive and negative, and they're useful in assessing whether a course or a program has an impact on learners' attitudes and motivations to learning. So through participating in the course, have they got a more positive impression of adult learning? So to use these questions, you would simply put them in a survey, ask them before and afterwards, and then you'd create a score per person. So if someone strongly agreed, you might give that a score of 5. If they strongly disagreed, a score of 1. And you'd add that up to create an overall score for each person. And then you could just simply compare that score at the start and the end of the course over the group of learners to see whether there was any difference. Aware of time, so I do have another example, but I'll just skip past that, I think. I just wanted to give one quick example of how this toolkit has been used in practice. So Citizen Literacy is an independent social enterprise spin out from the City of Glasgow College. Some of you may be aware of them because they featured in our English Maths and ESOL Conference last year. And they were one of the grantees in the Nesta Career Tech Challenge. So through the funding, they built a free app which helps to support adult beginner readers and writers to develop basic digital and literacy skills. Now, they conducted an evaluation as part of the grant to understand which elements of the app worked effectively and to assess the effectiveness of the tool in developing people's reading and writing. They did both a process and an impact evaluation and using the toolkit to help them develop this. And as a result of the evaluation, they were able to identify a range of positive outcomes for learners from using the app. So both in terms of proficiency, but also in terms of improvements in daily lives and activities. So being able to go out more, catch bus more, go into shops, engaging in text-based activities at work. So key positive tangible outcomes which emerged from the evaluation. It also helped them to understand the factors in the app that influence learner outcomes, which has helped them to continue developing and shaping the app as they went forward. Right, that's about it. So aware the time's run out, so I'll finish there.
Thank you very much, Corinne. And I know Learning and Work have got a poll that they're about to launch. So it'd be wonderful if once that appears on your screens, if you'd be able to respond to it. It's just broadly looking, getting an idea of how many people in the room have engaged in action research or other forms of research as a basic skills practitioner or as a manager. And we have only got a few minutes left. I've noticed that in the chat we've had a couple of questions, or a few questions. One was from Joy asking if there's online training available for tutors to teach digitally. The Education and Training Foundation have got a number of suites of support, both free and pay, either as an individual or as part of your institution. There are some links in the chat which you can download before the end of the session if you'd like to keep hold of it, or just visit the ETS website. Vicky Butterby's also asked, has said that it's wonderful to see the PowerPoints and the use of the avatars, which are very engaging. Lucy, did you find that the learners engaged more because of the things that you put in place?
Hi, sorry. Yes, yeah, they were really engaged with the whole virtual classroom thing. They did become, especially the 16 to 18 learners, really enjoyed that aspect.
Okay, super. And as commented, there are, or in the chat, there are write-ups of all of these projects and others that are available on, again, the Education and Training Foundation website. And there are a number of links in the chat if you want to follow up on those. So I'm very aware of the time, it's 11:56, and we're due to go to break in order to return to the panel discussions. So I will just double check whether the poll is going to be made live for people to, there we go. You may need to click on the poll icon on the bottom of your screen in order to be able to see the poll. So at the moment I can't see it. But I can see the results. I don't know if that's because I'm in as an administrator. In the meantime, I'd just like to thank Rachel very much for presenting to us on her developing writing project, supporting ESOL learners to improve their performance for functional skills exams, and the fascinating insights into absorbing grammar through their stronger listening skills, and utilising that focus in a wider context that was personal and creative for them. And to Lucy for sharing her work on online learning and virtual classrooms, and particularly sharing the utility of respecting learner boundaries with, for example, avatars in the virtual classroom in order to encourage participation, which was one of the outcomes of the project. And Corinne, thank you very much for sharing the toolkit. As Corinne said, that's very much an introductory toolkit, so it's for those of us who are getting started with research to look at some of the practical and social evaluation mechanisms that we'd be able to use. And hopefully, Corinne, yes, Corinne's been able to share the link to that, which is available on the Learning and Work website, if any of you want to look that up. I'd also encourage, before we finish up, any of you that are engaging in research, you don't have to participate in large formal projects. Most of us engage in forms of research work just because we're teachers. So Rapal does publish around people's reflective practice, as well as project write-ups, which are slightly longer and would expect some referencing and structure, but they don't have to be fully academic peer review pieces. And we do publish fully academic peer review pieces as well. So the aim is to scaffold all of us through both reading through and writing for that content. Thank you all very, very much for joining us. And I hope you enjoy the panel session, which is, I think, in 10 or 15 minutes. Let me have a quick look at my calendar before I let you go. Unless everything's changed, which it may have done at the last minute, I think it's at about 12:10. We've got a keynote from Andrew Brownlee, who's a Chief Executive Officer for SOLAS in Ireland. And at 12:30, we have a panel with Andrew Brownlee again and 3 other colleagues in the sector. So that should be very interesting. Thank you, everyone, and see you, I hope, at some point in the future.